gentlemen, sorry, I'm going to read this, so you're going to have to deal with this. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry, I won't detain you long from your food and from the real reason we're here, to witness the spectacle of Mick dancing. What can you say about a man who came from humble beginnings? A man who is now quickly rising to the very top of his profession, based solely on intelligence, grit, and the willpower to push on where others have fallen. A man who is beginning to distinguish himself at the very highest level amongst his peers, and where none can say a bad word against him. Anyway, that's enough about me. My name is Paddy, and I'm the best. So, in the many hours Mick and myself spent philosophizing, drinking. Over the years, we discussed many things. When we talked about weddings and marriage, I always envisaged myself being Mick's best man. And funny enough, that the chief bridesmaid would be young enough to be my daughter. Obviously, I expected this to happen in about 20 years' time. Nevertheless, I would like to thank Mick for his kind words for leading me. I think she's done a fantastic job today. She's only been outshone, and rightly so, by our stunning bride, Tonia. When I first met Tonia, my impression was of a beautiful, witty, charming, clever, friendly and thoughtful person. But she soon ruined this by agreeing to marry Mick. However, I'm sure all the men here today will agree it's a sad day and a great loss that Tonia is now officially off the market. And ladies, I'm sure you will agree that today has passed without so much as a ripple regarding Mick. The more they laugh, the more they encourage you. So they're all about the best man. It's a huge responsibility. In fact, I did quite a bit of research into what my duties were, and I was intrigued to know that the original role of the best man was to act as a bodyguard for both the groom and the bride. So during the weddings, the bride would stand to the left of her groom so that his sword arm was free. The best man would keep his hand on his sword, ready to fend off trouble and protect the couple. However, it was with growing interest that I read that during these times the best swordsman in the area was chosen as best man. So it's often been said. I didn't mean it that way. I didn't know that. It has often been said that the trouble with being best man is that you never get a chance to prove it. I would like to thank Mick for finally admitting that I am the better man. I was truly honoured when Mick asked me to be his best man. Paddy, he said, I'm probably really going to regret this, but will you be my best man at the wedding? And indeed I was delighted for both him and Tonia, but later I had some time to reflect on the news. Tonia agreeing to marry Mick? Astounding. Mick actually allowing me to speak publicly about him? Naive. Mick, you should have stuck with your gut. You are really going to regret this. So then I started to think about the various escapades in Mick's sordid past. Drinking sessions that would have made George Best and Oliver Reed tremble. More run-ins with the law than Sienna Miller. Unmentionable nights in Las Vegas, New York, Boston, San Francisco probably as well. Yeah. Arguments with bouncers, arguments with taxi drivers, arguments with Gardaí, arguments with policemen, arguments with concert stewards, arguments with sports grounds. In fact, arguments with any authority figure. And it was at that point that I realised the true genius of Mick. I was there at every single one of them. I can't say a single thing without incriminating myself. It's practically guaranteed an innocuous speech. However, there are some stories. So, my main duty today is to give you all an introduction to the groom, telling tales about his crazy adventures as a young man, his brushes with the legal world, the marathon sessions in the pub, strings of meaningless flings, and I should then introduce the benevolent influence of our bride and our young hero, as she struggled to tame a man with an approach to life that combined ape-like urges with gay abandon. Of course, I can't cover everything, so it's not gay abandon. So, there comes a time in every man's life when they meet their one true love, their kindred spirit, their destiny, the person who will know and understand them for the rest of their lives. And that moment came for Mick when he met me 12 years ago. I would like to think that I played a large part in making Mick the man that stands before us today, and just Tonia, I sincerely apologise. So in preparation for the speech, I canvassed many people to sum Mick up in one word, and overwhelmingly that word was argumentative. So to confirm if this view was true, I got in touch with Mick's favourite organisation, which is the IFTD. It's the International Federation of Taxi Drivers. So a number of comrades contacted me to confirm this view. There was one from Argentina who confirmed that Mick had a hard head. I'll tell you the story later. One from Australia who agreed that yes, as the driver, he should indeed know where he was going. And there was also a delegation from Mountjoy Prison in Dublin. And it was they who informed me of this little-known anecdote. There's one afternoon a few years back, Mick and Tonia decided to go to a pub in Dublin to watch a rugby match. I met them later that evening when Tonia was still in the possession of her poise and grace, and Mick was poise and disgrace. An executive decision was made for them to get a taxi and go home. However, Mick's argumentativeness meant that what should have been a 15-minute journey turned into the happy couple being thrown out not one, but 2 taxis en route home. But it was at that point that I knew that Mick and Tonia were serious and destined for a future together. In fact, now that I think about it, I'm sure that it was at that point that Tonia realised just how serious it was as well. She was in too deep to get out. So one word of advice for you, Mick, is if you argue with a woman and win, you lose. However, argumentative isn't the only way that you could describe Mick. When I think of our friendship, I'm immediately drawn to how Mick is possibly the worst wingman one could ever have. I'm not the only one who thinks this. Whereas the universal purpose of a wingman is to support his friend in approaching women. I'm a friend. Mick had an alternative view to his role as wingman, and a number of instances stand out. A couple of years ago, Mick invited me down to the Rose of Tralee contest, which is held in the heart of Kerry. And I should state at this point that the defining trait of the people of Kerry is their pathological hatred of Dublin, and in particular Dublin people. Any self-respecting Kerry girl would walk out mid-sentence rather than stay a minute later talking to a dirty Dub. And as you may have guessed, I'm from Dublin. So for that whole weekend, in any conversation with any girl, Mick waited just long enough for me to make a reasonable impression before leaning in and saying, "He's from Dublin." End the conversation. However bad that may appear, it pales in comparison to involving his sister in his treachery. Whilst in London, I got talking to one of Keelan's attractive friends. She's many attractive friends. Obviously, I expected to get the brush off after 2 minutes. However, after half an hour, I was still hanging in there. In fact, I should have been suspicious at this point, as Mick would normally step in to scupper my chances. After an hour, I realised that something was up. The reason being that the girl said to me, "You're a bit of a flirt for a queer." It was then that I turned to see Keelan and Mick doubled over, crying. When I'd gone to the bar, they told the poor trusty girl that I was gay. And if that's not enough to convince you, a number of years back, myself and Mick travelled to Barcelona for a week to visit friends. And it was here that Mick endeavoured to learn some Spanish as part of his wingman role. Esperacho y feo, which translates to, he is drunk and ugly. Why are we friends? Although to be fair, Mick is a keen scholar of Oscar Wilde, and as he said, true friends stab you in the front. However, Mick does have some good points, and top of these is his generous nature. After all, he has donated his body to medical research. In fact, the 4 years he spent in UCD, he preserved his body in alcohol the entire time. And indeed, his generous nature was never more evident than last month at Johnny Campbell's wedding. Mick allowed me and a few of the guests to ring up €200 on the food. Once again, our thanks. Mick does have some things to be proud of. Obviously, his decision to propose to Tonia is top of the list. However, a close second is the night that Mick was in the Three Sisters pub in Edinburgh, at the top of the staircase, with a pint of Guinness in each hand. He managed to slip and bounce down every step on his ass. He reached the bottom step, stunned, with a bouncer glaring at him. Mick looked up, stared him straight in the eye and said, "Well, hey, I didn't spill a drop!" Seriously though, today is a very special occasion for Mick and Tonia. They're a fantastic couple. and I've been fortunate enough to see them grow close together over the last number of years. And from a personal point of view, Mick has been the greatest of friends to me for the last 12 years. He's the first person whose opinion I look for. He's given me great advice, and he's been there for me as a friend over the years. You've been a true friend to me, Mick, and I look forward to knowing you and Tonia for the rest of our lives. So then, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to invite you all to be upstanding that you are, and raise your glasses in toast to Mick and Tonia. We wish them well for the future, and may they enjoy a long and happy marriage. So maybe first to give you